A slow and painful slide from a battered brain.
Were you watching your mother die?
Absolutely.
An injury most commonly associated with contact sports, now linked to trauma in American homes. The unexpected reach of CTE that suggests those suffering its effects are far from alone. Firefighters in danger before they ever run into a burning building.
The numbers of these chemicals in our report, they look like a typo. They're so high.
The gear they wear could be slowly killing them. Spotlight on America investigates the failure to protect our first responders. Hospitals unprepared for critically ill kids coming through their emergency room doors. If an ER is not pediatric ready, more children die.
It's absolutely true, yeah.
The gap in critical care that can mean life or death for children across America. Plus, young people addicted to social media, the mental and physical impact on the mind, and the growing effort to push back on big tech. Taxpayers fronting the bill for professional sports stadiums. Do the returns justify the investment?
Why do cities continue to bend over backwards with millions of dollars?
Right, well, that's the big question, right?
Spotlight investigates. Hello and welcome to this Spotlight on America special, coming to you from Washington, D.C. I'm National Investigative Correspondent Angie Moreski. We begin with a look at a degenerative and sometimes deadly brain disease triggered by hits to the head. CTE is well documented in contact sports like football, but now experts say millions of Americans could be suffering from this silent killer. Correspondent Dwayne Pullman joins us from Cincinnati to explain.
Angie, the millions we're talking about are domestic violence victims. And a Los Angeles woman's mother is among the very first cases connecting CTE to violence at home. She sat down with me for an exclusive interview.
Sadness ripples through the smile in these photos of a woman who died from traumatic brain injuries.
You saw your mother beaten repeatedly.
All my life.
Domestic violence delivered for decades, Maria Garay Serratos says, by her father.
Pushing, shoving, strangling, choking, the head against the car.
Maria's mother bore scars and battled debilitating headaches. After nearly 40 years of abuse, Maria finally convinced her mother to escape.
So you got her away from him?
I had to get her away.
It was too late.
The profound dementia that just started hitting her was very sad to see.
Were you watching your mother die?
Absolutely.
Doctors diagnosed Alzheimer's. Maria, who has a PhD and master's in social work, suspected chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, a degenerative and often deadly brain disease that afflicts football players, other athletes, and members of the military who suffer repeated blows to their heads. But a CTE diagnosis can only be confirmed by dissecting the brain after death.
Could it be described as a silent killer?
Absolutely.
Maria believes the number of CTE cases in domestic violence victims is in the tens of millions.
A silent and ignored, unrecognized pandemic.
Maria's mother passed away in 2015. Maria donated her brain to search for signs of CTE. 3.5 years later, Dr. Ann McKee, a pioneer in the study of CTE and director of the Unite Brain Bank in Boston, finally gave Maria answers. In the documentary, This Hits Home, Dr. McKee delivered the news to Maria for the very first time.
Her brain was just being ruined by those injuries.
In addition to massive brain damage and onset of Alzheimer's, Dr. McKee confirmed Maria's mother also suffered from CTE. It made headlines, the first public case of CTE linked to domestic violence. In an interview at the Brain Bank, Dr. McKee told me more study is needed.
Would you like to study that if you were given the ability to get the brains of these
absolutely.
victims?
Maria founded a nonprofit named for her mother, now focused on a search for a silent killer in violent relationships around the world.
My mission is to create a global movement around the issue of domestic violence and head trauma and CTE.
Most athletes today receive immediate treatment after a head hit or a concussion, but most domestic violence victims are never even diagnosed or treated. If you want to know more, we've posted important resources for you about CTE and domestic violence on our website, spotlightinvestigates.com. In Cincinnati, I'm Dwayne Pullman.
Dwayne, thank you. Now to a grave concern for our nation's firefighters. The men and women who run into burning buildings to save us are increasingly dying of cancer at younger ages. Spotlight on America's Lisa Fletcher joins us here in D.C. with her investigation.
The World Health Organization recently classified the job of firefighting as a carcinogen, putting it in the same class of risk as cigarettes. Spotlight investigates failing protections for firefighters, both in the gear they wear and life-saving insurance coverage for early cancer detection. When terrorists hit the Pentagon with a passenger jet on September 11, 2001, firefighter Brian Harisic had a week-old baby.
Brian looked at me and said, "Hey, I have to go to work."
Harisic was dedicated to his career, serving as a medic and firefighter. That baby, his daughter Madison, now 22, is navigating life without her dad.
My dad was my best friend on the planet.
Last year, at age 51, he died of pancreatic cancer, leaving his family wondering if the profession he loved may have caused the disease that took his life. In 2023, 72% of line-of-duty deaths for firefighters were from cancer. We obtained a running list of job-related cancer deaths among firefighters since 2018. It wasn't uncommon for us to find victims in their 20s and 30s. Untold numbers of other firefighters are diagnosed each day, like Diane Cotter's husband, Paul, who was in perfect health until a shattering diagnosis at 55 years old.
When the doctor said those words, "It's cancer," I screamed, and my husband just broke out into a white sweat.
It would end his 27-year career in firefighting. The news that Paul had to leave his beloved job as a first responder was devastating and sent him into depression.
His depression is what spurred me on to research firefighter cancer. This room, it's the war room.
Diane launched a crusade, turning her knitting room into a command center, firing off 25,000 emails, trying to unravel the mystery of why so many young firefighters were getting cancer. She discovered that embedded in their turnout gear were fluorinated chemicals known as PFAS, a class of waterproof materials long suspected to be carcinogens.
The numbers of these chemicals in our report, they look like a typo. They're so high.
Those PFAS chemicals are now suspected of contributing to firefighters' risk of developing cancer at a rate significantly higher than the general population.
I am concerned at the slow pace that we are moving to address this real problem.
Massachusetts Congressman Jim McGovern has been among the loudest voices on this issue for more than 6 years and is a co-sponsor of a new bill to get the PFAS out of firefighter gear. But this isn't a first attempt. Despite multiple bills addressing this, nothing has passed at the federal level to ban the chemicals or force insurance companies to cover early cancer screening for firefighters.
It seems like it takes a long time for the urgency of something to reach the levels at which change happens.
It is frustrating and it is maddening that we are moving at such a slow pace. I mean, there are chemical companies and there are corporate interests and there's lots of money that is involved, and as a result, there's always an excuse not to move forward.
6 years ago, Congress created the Firefighter Cancer Registry to gather information for prevention and diagnosis, but its creation was met with little urgency.
Congress passed the Firefighter Cancer Registry in 2018. It's now 2024. There's still no usable data.
There's no excuse for that. There's no excuse at all. And there's no excuse, again, for Congress not acting more deliberately. The lack of action on PFAS, the runaround on screening for cancer for firefighters, all that, is something that we should be ashamed about. Our firefighters deserve a hell of a lot better.
And for the Harisic family, that starts with cancer testing for firefighters early and often.
Had they caught it a month earlier, 2 months earlier, would we have been able to change the ending?
We contacted 8 of the largest health insurance companies in the U.S. to find out if they're covering screenings for early detection and at what age a firefighter is eligible. Not one of them answered our question.
It is inexcusable that you can't get a straight answer from health insurance companies about screening firefighters for cancer. I expect that it has a lot to do with money. It's all about money.
For Diane Cotter and so many others, it's about justice. More than 20,000 firefighters, including her husband Paul, have joined a federal lawsuit against PFAS manufacturers.
The polluters have to pay. They've poisoned America's bravest. I stay in contact with so many widows and widowers of firefighters, and I want them to know we're seeking justice for them. We truly are.
As Congressman McGovern fights for laws to protect our responders, he's growing frustrated with the inaction in Washington.
How the hell were we so complacent for all these years? I mean, what the hell are we waiting for?
Given the known risk of PFAS to firefighters, we asked the CDC how much research is going specifically into PFAS and firefighter cancer. The agency did not answer our question. In Washington, D.C., I'm Lisa Fletcher.
Still ahead, in an emergency, every second counts, but some parents could be driving their child to a hospital that can't help them.
They didn't know how to start a transfusion. They asked me for help.
What hospitals need to do to make sure kids can get the care they need. Plus, social media addiction isn't just changing the way young people think, it's physically changing their brains. This important Spotlight investigation coming up. Welcome back to our Spotlight on America special. In an emergency, where you go to get care for a critically ill child could mean the difference between life and death. New research shows increased risk for kids when hospital emergency rooms are not pediatric ready. We take a closer look at what that could mean for your family. When your child has an emergency, getting care fast is essential. But many parents don't realize the ER they go to might not be prepared to care for kids.
The majority of hospitals see fewer than 10 children per day in the emergency department, and that makes it extremely difficult to be able to maintain your pediatric skills.
Does that put children at higher risk if you're not experienced in treating children?
Absolutely.
Dr. Kate Remick is co-director of the National Pediatric Readiness Project, which evaluates emergency departments nationwide. In the latest survey, the median score was just 69 out of 100 for nearly 4,000 hospitals that responded, with a score above 83 considered high readiness.
There needs to be a deliberate focus on pediatric care. Otherwise, there's a potential to misstep.
Once they're done, then I'll come back up, okay?
Yolanda Lewis knows all too well what can go wrong when an emergency room is unprepared to care for a child.
Basically, they asked me what sickle cell was. They wasn't informed or they wasn't educated on it.
3 of her 5 kids have sickle cell disease, a blood disorder that can cause seizures and strokes and requires regular blood transfusions. The family now travels an hour and a half every month from their home in Gary, Indiana, to Beacon Children's Hospital in South Bend to get the specialized care they need. But that's not always possible in an emergency. When Marvin, now 15, was little, they had a terrible scare.
I took him to the hospital close by. Nothing was wrong, they said.
Something was wrong, but the hospital discharged Marvin until Yolanda called their pediatric specialist for help.
They called back up to the hospital and they told me to take him back now. Every time I take my kids to the emergency room, I risk the fear of them not knowing what to do.
This 2019 study of hospitals nationwide, published by the American Academy of Pediatrics, found a critically ill child was 4 times more likely to die when admitted to an emergency department that is not pediatric ready. If an ER is not pediatric ready, more children die.
It's absolutely true, yeah.
Dr. Kate Dukevich is the medical director at Beacon Children's Hospital, where Yolanda's kids are now treated. One of the few hospitals in northern Indiana providing pediatric specialty care.
There are not very many beds for kids, and we have seen that get a lot worse in the last several years.
According to the Pediatric Readiness Project, only about half of children nationwide have access to an emergency department that is pediatric ready.
Our emergency care systems were not designed with children in mind.
Remick says more training and planning are needed because caring for kids is not the same as caring for adults.
All right, you ready?
With fewer pediatric units open, the hope is necessity will drive progress at community hospitals for the sake of families like the Lewises. What is your greatest worry?
My greatest worry is that they won't get the care they need.
The Pediatric Readiness Project estimates if all emergency departments nationwide were pediatric ready, we could save as many as 1,400 children's lives a year. Now to another worry for young people, some alarming discoveries about the impact of social media. Correspondent Christine Frizzau has that story.
That's right, Angie. We are learning of more evidence of social media's effects on their brain development.
Got one more of these.
It's a rare break for 17-year-old Olivia Mead, working on healthy habits in the kitchen. She is the first to admit her relationship with social media is not so healthy.
Like most of the day, like when I'm awake, like I'm usually on social media.
It's an addiction she is open about, and with which her mom, Carrie, sometimes grows impatient.
I think this is probably familiar for many parents of teenagers. It's like, put your phone down at the dinner table. Can you put your phone down while I'm talking to you?
Neurologically, like there is a need to answer it. Like your brain gets triggered and it's like.
Why do you feel like you have to answer right away?
Because I don't know, it's just like a habit almost.
That habit? One reason the social media company Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, is being sued for harnessing technologies to, quote, entice, engage, and ultimately ensnare youth and teens, adding that Meta has repeatedly misled the public about the substantial dangers of its social media platforms.
They have put our kids at risk, they've lied about it, and we're going to hold them accountable.
New Jersey Attorney General Matt Platkin is one of 41 attorneys general to sign on to the lawsuit. Last year, a 14-year-old in his state, Adriana Kush, died by suicide a day after a video of her getting attacked in her school went viral. And multiple New Jersey school districts have also filed lawsuits against social media companies, blaming them for students' worsening mental health.
They've put products out there that cause significant harm to residents. And who ends up footing that bill? The taxpayers.
New data on the issue are piling up, including one study published in the journal Nature detailing how some with varying degrees of social network site addictions had reduced gray matter volumes in the amygdala, a part of the brain that helps control emotions and behavior.
Fully myelinated frontal lobe is not finished myelinating until you're about 25.
Dr. Mark Argentiano is a neurosurgeon in New Jersey.
Atrophy is a wasting away of people who are using social media in a way that would be described as addictive.
So when you say social media is changing kids' brains, you're not just talking about the behavioral aspect, you're talking about physically could be changing the kids' brains.
Yes.
Since the lawsuit was filed, Meta has made changes, including more restrictive content control for teens, and promising now when people search for terms related to suicide, self-harm, and eating disorders, we'll start hiding related results and direct them to resources for help. For Olivia Mead, it's simply a habit she is, for now, not ready to break, even when she heads off to college next year.
Obviously, I'm going to go to my classes, I'm going to do my homework. One of the things that like relaxes me is just like laying in bed and scrolling on my phone.
Additional jurisdictions are considering legal action against big tech, while others are looking into potential social media restrictions or even bans.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Christine Frizzau.
If you build it, they will come. But if you don't,
there's the fear of if we don't give them this, they're going to take our team away.
Taxpayers continue to be leveraged by professional sports teams. Spotlight investigates if these investments pay off. That's next. Welcome back. Taxpayers across America are being asked to foot the bill for professional sports in their cities. The question many are asking, is it worth it? Spotlight's Chris Daniels is in Seattle with the debate.
I took the question to Oakland, California, which lost the Raiders to Las Vegas and is poised to lose baseball's athletics too. Taxpayers are wondering why local municipalities continue to give away their money at a time when critics say there is little return on the investment.
It's our palace, our church.
The A's have played in Oakland's Coliseum since 1968. Any way to estimate how many A's games you've seen at this stadium?
God, over 2,000.
Yet longtime fan Jorge Leon now stands here skeptical about the owner's true intentions. Different type of money ball now.
Different type of money ball.
The team had been searching for a new stadium for more than a decade, and after owner John Fisher seemingly had a deal with the city for a new multi-billion-dollar Oakland waterfront park and infrastructure improvement plan, he pulled the plug to roll the dice in Las Vegas. Nevada's legislature and governor agreed to spend $380 million in taxpayer money last year to fund the endeavor, even though Fisher himself had not secured the rest of the financing. Major League Baseball still approved the move. Proponents of these type of projects argue they bring millions in tax revenue into municipalities that otherwise would not exist. Why do cities continue to bend over backwards with millions of dollars?
Right, well, that's the big question, right? Is why is it after all of this time with all the economists pointing out there's no public benefit to putting public money into private sports stadium deals?
Author Neil DeMoss has chronicled sports stadium deals for decades and continues to write for the website Field of Schemes. There have been privately financed deals in places like Seattle, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. But Oklahoma City taxpayers approved spending $850 million in December for a new Thunder NBA arena, after Buffalo and New York lawmakers agreed to pay the same amount in 2022 for the NFL's Bills. And Tennessee taxpayers are on the hook for more than $1.2 billion for a new NFL Titans stadium.
Part of it is sports leagues are monopolies, so there's the fear of if we don't give them this, they're going to take our team away.
There are still some T's to be crossed and I's that need to be dotted before the A's officially leave Oakland.
Nevada ranks 48th in the nation in education funding.
What would $380 million mean to Nevada teachers and the educational system?
Having an extra $380 million goes towards reducing our class sizes, helping with teacher vacancies.
Alexander Marks is with the Nevada State Education Association and is preparing a constitutional challenge and public referendum on the A's deal.
I think when you put a vote like this to the Nevada people, they're going to put schools over stadiums. This is not popular.
People in Seattle and New Jersey paid debt on stadiums like the Kingdome and the Meadowlands years after they were torn down. And in Broomfield, Colorado, the city will demolish the First Bank Center after 17 years with more than $30 million in outstanding taxpayer debt.
We're still going to keep fighting for that team.
Leon says he doesn't want that mess for Oaktown, which is why he'll keep banging the drum in the Bay Area for some other solution, even if it is well into the bottom of the ninth. Allegiant Stadium, which hosted Super Bowl 58, was built in part using $750 million in Nevada taxpayer money. The Raiders call it their home after moving from Oakland's Coliseum. I'm Chris Daniels in Seattle.
Chris, thank you. And that's all for this Spotlight on America special. If you have a tip or idea you'd like us to investigate, we want to hear from you. Just go to spotlightinvestigates.com and click on the Contact Us tab. Or you can send us an email to spotlight@sbgtv.com. Many thanks to you for watching. Until next time, from our nation's capital, I'm Angie Moreski for Spotlight on America.